everybody. I'm Dr. Rachel Jabaily, and I'm a professor at Colorado College. But today I'm here at the University of Connecticut in their research greenhouses, working with my collaborator, Dr. Carolina Duke, who's filming this at the moment. I've been working on bromeliads since I was an undergraduate, and I thought in this video I'd tell you a little bit about the plant family Bromeliaceae. So I'm going to start really big. What are bromeliads? Well, bromeliads are plants, right? So they are photosynthesizers getting their energy from the sun. Now within plants, they are vascular plants, moving water and sugar around in their body. Within vascular plants, they are flowering plants. So they reproduce via flowers, as we see over here. These haven't quite opened yet, but this will have a bunch of beautiful little white flowers very soon. Within flowering plants, bromeliads are monocots. So that's a big group of flowering plants that includes lots of things that we use every day: corn, rice, wheat, bamboo, etc. And in fact, bromeliads include useful plants like the pineapple. Monocots tend to have long, strappy leaves, and the veins, if you can see them, run parallel next to each other. Okay, so then the Bromeliaceae is a plant family, and there's probably around 4,000 species, but the Bromeliaceae, as is the case with many tropical plant groups, we're describing new species all the time, which is really, really exciting. So we don't actually know how many species are out there, and botanists, like maybe you someday, could go out and find new species. So this plant family lives almost entirely in North, Central, and South America. So it's primarily New World, as we say, and neotropical. So mostly it's distributed in the tropical regions, though there are some species that go outside of that into more temperate North America as well as more temperate South America. I should say there is a species that is native to West Africa, believe it or not. It was not brought there by people, but rather we think it was brought by birds tens of millions of years ago, but it's the only species native outside of there. Now, pineapple itself is cultivated all over the world, so like in Hawaii, in the Philippines, etc., etc. So people have moved bromeliads around the world. Besides pineapple, bromeliads are beloved plants for horticulture and gardening. You can find bromeliads for sale at many garden centers, Home Depot, stuff like that. They're very popular indoor kind of tropical house plants. So I'm going to tell you a little story about how bromeliads originated and diversified around the New World tropics. So bromeliads, figuring out what the closest relative of their plant family has been kind of a challenge actually for science. Right now we think they're very close relatives of cattails as well as grasses and their relatives. And we think that the group originated in northern South America in what is today Venezuela and northern Brazil in this region called the Tepuis, where there's these giant, tall, flat mountains that are really, really old. If you've seen the Pixar film Up, which you should, it's sort of set in that landscape. And today there's lots of bromeliads that are only found up on those tabletop mountains. The group that spread out around South America, a lot of the speciation and evolution happened in the Atlantic coastal rainforest of Brazil. So this is a rainforest right along the coast of Brazil. It's separate from the Amazon. Unfortunately, most of it's been cut down because that's kind of the main center of human populations in Brazil, like Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro. But today, in the remnants of those forests, you can find more species of bromeliad there than pretty much anywhere else. Other lineages of bromeliads diversified in the Andean mountains along kind of the west coast of South America. A group of bromeliads I studied for my PhD did just that. So you can find them everywhere from down at sea level in Chile up into the Andes, almost to kind of like perpetual snowpack up there. Bromeliads really like to speciate, had a lot of evolution and made new species in tropical forests. Now, bromeliads also diversified in Mexico, the Caribbean islands, and in Florida, as well as kind of the southeastern U.S. Today, in the contiguous U.S., Florida has by far the greatest amount of species of bromeliads. About the furthest north you'll see any bromeliads would be, say, like southern Virginia, where Spanish moss, which is neither Spanish nor moss, it's a bromeliad, Tillandsia leucospheoides, is found. So that's kind of the distribution of bromeliads. One thing that's really exciting about bromeliads is multiple times epiphytism, or the ability of a plant to live on top of another plant, or sometimes a power line, etc., has evolved. And the plants essentially just use their roots, which are tiny, to hold on to the side of a tree or whatever. And then the functions of roots, which are predominantly to pull in water and minerals, that can't be done by roots, so it's done by the leaves. So here's a really cool example of that. This is Tillandsia utriculata, and this friend lives throughout Mexico and up into Florida. And here's its little roots, and there's actually some moss on here as well. And they're not really doing much here. It lives in a basket, it's not even in soil. I don't know if you can see this, the leaves are covered in kind of white or silvery dots. These are actually hairs made of probably dozens to hundreds of cells each, and they look like a satellite dish. If you were to use a microscope or a hand lens or something to see, they would look like little satellite dishes. And when there's a film of water on that, it's pulling the water directly into the leaf. So that's a really unique adaptation that bromeliads have to living high up and just pulling everything they need out of the air. You may also notice that the leaf bases are kind of pulled out and curved, and there's actually standing water kind of deep down in that tank, as we call it. Now that's another adaptation that some bromeliad lineages have to dealing with dryness and getting minerals. So they build and hold kind of a water supply around them for future use. And that water is a rich source of microbial and animal life. It's kind of like a little mini rainforest in and of itself. There are so many microbes in there, insects, frogs. It's a source of water and food for lots of creatures, providing a home, but then the plant is accessing the minerals through all of the kind of processes that's happening in there. And just like we don't know how many species of bromeliads there are, we know even less about all of the complexity, what's happening with all of these microbes and other organisms, how they're related to each other, what are they doing, how the plant is utilizing them, etc., etc. So much to be studied there. There are other bromeliads, like we see over here, these beautiful brown Dickias here, that live in the soil, and they have roots in the ground, so they're not really reliant upon their leaves for pulling in water so much. And these are more desert adapted. You can see the spines on them. They do not want any animals eating their leaves. Bromeliads have lots of relationships with insects and hummingbirds and bats for pollination, as well as for fruit dispersal, bats in particular being important for that. So they're a really important part of ecosystems throughout the New World, as well as Western Africa. So I hope that helped you get even more excited about this great plant family. Thanks.